Essentially, Nothing became an audio company in 2021, sort of. They started earlier, but then they released their first phone, the Nothing Phone 1, in 2022. For £400, this is the phone that you got. It wasn't until 2023 that I got this one for $300 US, a lot cheaper than the $470 USD that it converted to originally. While being a good phone around that time, it feels like it's actually become the best mid-range phone from 2022, something I would have never agreed with until I used the Samsung A53 5G and looked at the other competition from 2022, like the Motorola Moto G 5G 2022 and the OnePlus Nord 2T. Indeed, this Nothing Phone 1 is possibly my favorite non-flagship device that I've used in quite a while. Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and today let's talk about the Nothing Phone 1 to see if it's still worth buying if you want to grab this phone in 2025. Let's get started. Now, saying this is kind of the best in the segment is a bold claim, especially given that I'm not actually considering the other competition that does exist. And look, I can be wrong, but this is how I feel for using this phone on and off for the last 2 years. The main reason is the thing that powers this phone. While the Snapdragon 778G Plus processor, 8GB of RAM, and 128GB of UFS 3.1 storage don't really sound too impressive, this is on par or exceeds most of its competition, if not all. This is running Nothing OS 3 or Android 15, which is impressive given that the processor on paper slightly exceeds something like the Samsung S10e. I'm pretty sure there's going to be no more major updates though, so don't expect Android 16 on here, even though that update feels like it's just a bunch of app updates. As for the battery, we get the 4500 mAh cell with 33 watts of wired charging and 15 watts of wireless charging, and the option for reverse wireless charging. Of course, the design is what's so special about this phone, having the clear, intricate look on the back, while the rest looks kind of like an iPhone 12 Plus, if that ever existed. The aluminum band in the middle has a microphone on the top, volume buttons on the left side, and a power button on the right side. Then, the bottom is where the dual SIM tray, microphone, and bottom speaker are that pairs with the earpiece that gives you a solid stereo experience. And finally, that USB-C 2.0 port that allows for fast charging and slow data transfers. The front and back is Gorilla Glass 5, with the former having a hole punch for the front camera and an under-screen fingerprint scanner, and what feels like a really good bezel on the screen. Thankfully, this is a 6.55-inch 120Hz OLED panel that is 1080p and around 500 nits of brightness that can boost to about 1200 nits in certain conditions. Then the back is obviously clear glass and shows the back of the phone, allowing for you to see some screws, but more importantly that glyph interface, which is great for those that leave your phone face down, though I personally do not. There's 2 decent sized cameras on the back, another microphone and camera flash here, ironic because the glyph can give you a different look if you prefer that, but of course the flashlight is brighter than the glyphs. This is IP53 dust and water resistant, so not, has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2 support, and some 5G bands. Of course, depending on what carrier you have. I will note that the vibrating mechanism in this phone is kind of weird. Not bad, but also not entirely the most natural feeling. As for performance, it is a mid-range phone, but with a mix of decent processor, light operating system, and just overall no bloat. Normal operations are amazing, with gaming that holds up fairly well, but of course it will still get warm. Image-wise, great screen that isn't flagship level, but still is pleasing on the eyes. That 120Hz refresh rate and solid operating system makes this phone feel better than the Pixel 6a, and let's not even talk about the battery on that, even though on paper the Phone 1 should be slower by a decent amount. Now this should be no surprise, high megapixels don't always mean amazing. Serviceable, but nothing crazy to write about. No pun intended. The front camera is a 16 megapixel sensor that is fixed focus, so normal stuff, okay performance, 1080p 30 frames per second video, and overall an okay camera that is neither terrible nor groundbreaking. Then the rear has a dual 50 megapixel sensors, one being a focusable ultra-wide, so macro capable, while the other is a main wide camera that is optically stabilized. Do note that while they both can record 4K at 30 frames per second video, they cannot switch between each other when recording, something that I think the Samsung A53 5G could do. As for the images, it's hit or miss. I can't say these are terrible shots, but they're also not really mind-blowing. This could be due to the ISP in the processor because, remember, the main camera is the same one as the Asus Zenfone 9, which I personally think looks better than what the Phone 1 can produce. Ultimately, I'll let you decide, but I feel like they could have tweaked the image processing to give us a better camera over the years, which I believe nothing actually does when they do their software updates, but do I notice it? No. And yes, these are 12 megapixel shots, but there is a 50 megapixel mode, which they call the 12 megapixel HD and 50 megapixel Ultra HD. I wonder if nothing knows that Ultra HD is actually 8.3 megapixels and HD is 0.9 or 2.1 megapixels, depending on your definition. I like using this phone, but on paper, I technically shouldn't. The thing is, the software and screen refresh rate do the heavy lifting on this phone. I know this because after using this phone, I started using the Samsung Note 20, a phone that in benchmarks is technically faster by something like 15%, but with a 60Hz refresh rate for the screen and an arguably more bloated OS on the Note. But somehow, the Phone 1 feels noticeably faster. Nothing has roots in OnePlus, with some internal parts looking like they are some of OnePlus's parts, so it's not too surprising to see this. While Nothing OS seems like it can be gimmicky, I wouldn't really call it that simply because it expresses what Nothing is, with the dot matrix theme filling the phone if you let it. The monochrome feel also makes sense and allows the phone to really stand out. That and the performance is just overall great. The camera does need some work, but I also find it easier to write it off if you already have a full-size camera to pair with any phone that you use. The glyph interface, while cool, has always left me wanting more. It's pretty cool that it exists, allowing you to even compose some notifications and ringtones with it, but the app interface leaves me wanting more. I could never get the timer countdown to show up, and it really feels like what you see in the glyph menu is what you get, and that's it. The countdown apparently can't happen on this phone because of a design limitation, but is that truly it? Do all of the LEDs have to light up at the same time except for the bottom ones that can light some of them up? Whatever the reason actually is, some would say that the glyph is a gimmick, while I would say that it makes sense to call it that, but I also think that it's a useful addition compared to normal phones. Having wireless charging is pretty cool for a mid-range phone, but reverse wireless charging is so uncommon, I'm not even sure what phone in this price point even has that feature now. Battery life is good, not being terrible, but also not endless like some would expect out of that 4500 mAh cell and mid-range processor, though this chip was near flagship level 2 years prior. This is a tall phone at 6.27 inches and decently weighted at 193.5 grams, but surprisingly I was okay with both of those things. Honestly, the biggest downside of this phone is the camera set. Now the problem with buying this phone is, well, buying this phone. Looking up the Nothing Phone 1 brings up two things. Either the CMF Phone 1, which is actually a similar performing phone with worse cameras, a cheaper build, and no wireless charging, but at a decent price. But the other thing is that the Nothing Phone 1 is not cheap when you can find it. I mean, look, I'm seeing $350 and up, which is crazy to think that I might actually be able to sell my 2-year-old $300 Nothing Phone 1 for more than what I paid for it. Of course, this is due to availability, but because of that, I technically can't recommend this phone, thanks to that price. I mean, look at this. I'm seeing the Nothing Phone 2 for over $300, and technically, at that rate, I would just buy that almost flagship phone. And that's my review of the Nothing Phone 1, the first phone about nothing. Yep, a Seinfeld reference and play on words. Anyways, hopefully you enjoyed the review. Let me know what you think about Nothing in general. Join the 1%, and as always, thanks for watching.